I remember the stench of gasoline in the alley and the way the cold steel of a gun kissed the back of my neck. One second I was fumbling for my car keys, the next I was in a van, blinded, gagged wrists zip-tied. The world shrank into the sound of my own pulse and the rough scrape of gravel under spinning tires. I didn't scream. Not because I was brave, because I couldn't. That moment plays in my head like a loop I can't shut off. Every bump on the road, every boot scraping the floor. And the voice of the man in front, the one they called the Scar. Low, controlled, like he wasn't stealing a person, just retrieving a package. "You tell Hi he has 72 hours," he said to no one in particular. "Or the girl's gone. Hi." That name wasn't just familiar. It was the name I used to whisper in my prayers when I was a kid, hoping he'd finally come home sober. It was the name that once meant dad before it meant debts. I didn't know then how deep he'd fallen, but I was about to find out. 1 hour in, I was dragged into a candlelit room filled with smoke and silence. The Scar stood across from me looking like a nightmare stitched together from leather and war stories. A long scar ran from his eyebrow to his jawline like a red river. His eyes locked onto mine, not angry, not cruel, just empty. They called him Dominic. He pulled out his phone and dialed. No code, no mask, just straight to the point. "Mr. Hi," he said. "I have your daughter." My stomach turned. He was real. This wasn't a mistake. They hadn't gotten the wrong person. 500,000. "You have 3 days." There was a pause, and then laughter. My father's. It was soft at first, like a man trying to swallow something bitter. "Dom," he said, "you don't need to play games. You and I both know I'm never paying that." My body went cold. I stopped breathing. "You want her, keep her. We're square after this." I didn't scream then either, but I broke. Right there in that room that smelled like tobacco and death, I felt something rip inside me. I wasn't kidnapped anymore. I was traded. It wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was a deal, a transaction. He sold me. I know what you're thinking. How does a girl like me end up here? A dirty couch, blood on my lips, sold off like poker chips? That's the thing. It didn't happen all at once. I used to be Emily Tran, assistant manager at a flower shop, big dreamer sucker for late-night sushi, and fiercely loyal to the wrong people. My friends called me the mom of the group, always looking out, always picking up pieces. But with my dad, I always looked the other way. I made excuses. He's had a hard life. He'll change this time. He still loves me. Love doesn't sound like silence after a ransom call. Minute 2. Here's your emotional cut. I was still tied up when I heard one of the guards mutter, "That's cold, man." Even for Hi. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't a victim of a gang. I was a consequence of my father. And yet, I didn't beg. I didn't cry in front of them. Even when Dominic walked over, looked me in the eye, and said, "Looks like you're mine now." I kept my jaw clenched, because something cracked in me that day. Not just fear, not just betrayal. Resolve. The Scar thought he'd taken a girl. He had no idea he'd just inherited a storm. The first night they didn't lock the door. They didn't have to. The Scar's estate wasn't a house. It was a fortress. Wrought iron gates, motion sensors, cameras tucked into corners like blinking, all-seeing eyes. Even if I ran, there was nowhere to go and nowhere to hide. So I stayed. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of a velvet couch in a room too beautiful to feel like a prison. But that's what it was, a cage lined with chandeliers. The next morning, a woman in black brought me clean clothes. A white blouse, soft jeans, even undergarments in my size. She didn't say much, just nodded at the door like, "Get dressed," or "Don't, it's not my problem." I got dressed. Breakfast was quiet. The Scar sat at the head of a long wooden table, sipping black coffee like it was an art form. He didn't speak. He just watched me. Like I was something to be studied. I hated him for it. But more than that, I hated the way I sat still. The way I ate. The way I said thank you, like I was still someone polite. Someone who hadn't just been bought. They never said I couldn't leave the dining room. But I noticed things fast, no phone, no internet, no TV remotes that worked. The staff rarely looked me in the eye. The guards were polite but robotic, like I was just another object in the scars collection. By day 3, I realized he wasn't trying to terrify me. He didn't need to. Isolation did the job just fine. I thought I'd lose my mind, but I didn't, because I started noticing patterns, schedules, weaknesses, cracks in the armor. I started small, switched his favorite brand of whiskey with the cheaper one, rearranged books in his office library just enough to mess with the symmetry. I learned the code to the garden gate just in case. I was invisible but not idle. Each act wasn't much, but they were mine, tiny rebellions that kept my fire lit. And then came the music. One night I found a dusty piano in the east wing. No one was around. I sat down and let my fingers remember. My mom taught me when I was 7 before she left us both. I hadn't touched a key in years, but the muscle memory was there, Chopin of all things. Halfway through the piece, I felt someone watching. I turned. It was him. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I froze. "You play well," he said quietly. I stood to leave. "Sit," he added. "Play another." And for reasons I didn't understand, I did. That was the first time I saw a crack in Dominic's armor. He didn't smile, but something in his face softened. He asked me what the piece was called, then just nodded when I told him. No threats, no commands, just curiosity. It unnerved me. He started coming to the music room, never saying much, just listening. Sometimes I'd pretend he wasn't there. Sometimes I'd play loud and angry, slamming the keys like they were him. Other times I'd play gentle and slow and feel my own pulse slow with it. Music gave me a language that didn't require surrender. One afternoon I caught him feeding the strays outside the garden wall. A hardened Mafia king kneeling in the dirt offering meat to a 3-legged cat. He didn't know I was watching. I didn't tell anyone, and I didn't forget it. But don't mistake this for romance. Not yet. I still hated him. I still woke up every morning remembering the sound of duct tape being ripped from a roll. I still stared at my wrists and felt phantom plastic binding them together. But I started seeing something dangerous in him. Not just cruelty, depth. That was scarier than anything. Because if I saw his humanity, if I understood him even a little, how would I keep holding on to my hate and without hate? What was left, not a grand gesture, not some sweeping moment under the stars. Just a delicate porcelain cup left on my windowsill one morning. Chamomile, still warm, no note, no threat, just tea. And I drank it. I don't know why. Maybe I was tired of resisting things that didn't hurt. Or maybe I was curious what a man like Dominic thought kindness looked like. Because that's what it was, kindness wrapped in silence. Later that day, I passed him in the hall. He didn't say a word, didn't ask if I liked it, just nodded once. It was the smallest exchange. But something shifted. Not trust, not forgiveness, recognition. Dominic was a contradiction in motion, brutal in business, meticulous in manners. I saw him threaten a man over a shipment delay with the same calm he used when selecting wine with dinner. He ruled through fear but never raised his voice. He didn't need to. And yet, there were moments when I'd catch him standing still looking out the window like he was waiting for something that would never come. He had a room he never let anyone enter. 3rd floor, left wing, locked at all times. I passed it once while dusting. Yes, I cleaned sometimes just to feel useful, and he was already there staring at the door like it might open on its own. "Don't," he said without turning. Just one word. Cold. Final. I walked away. But I never stopped wondering what was behind it. The change between us was slow, like rain softening rock. I cooked once, out of boredom more than anything. Stir-fried vegetables with garlic just the way my mother used to make. I didn't expect anyone to eat it. But that night, Dominic sat down, picked up a fork, and didn't say a word as he cleaned the plate. The next night, I cooked again. And the next. Somehow meals became conversation. Conversation became glimpses. He told me he was from San Pedro, raised by his aunt, that his scar came from a knife fight he ended before it began. I told him about my job at the flower shop, about my best friend Carla, who used to make me laugh so hard I'd cry, About how I once tried to foster a puppy and ended up with a destroyed apartment and a broken heart when I had to give it up. He laughed. The sound was quiet, unpracticed, like he didn't do it often. I caught myself laughing too. Once I spilled a bag of flour in the kitchen and cursed loud enough to startle the cook. Dominic walked in, raised an eyebrow, and deadpanned. Should I call a hazmat team? I laughed until I cried. And when I looked up, he was smiling. Really smiling. That terrified me more than any gun ever could. Because feelings, real ones, have weight. They come with consequences. One night I had a nightmare. I woke up screaming, soaked in sweat, certain I was back in that van. The room felt too small. My breath came in gasps. I couldn't move. The door creaked open. It was Dominic. He didn't touch me, didn't speak, just sat in the armchair near my bed and waited, for minutes, maybe hours, until I finally calmed down, until I could breathe again. When I opened my eyes, he was still there, asleep, head tilted back, guard down, and that was the moment I knew something had changed between us. He wasn't just my captor anymore. He was something else. Still dangerous, still wrong, but also real. I started noticing things. How he always ordered extra food for the staff. How he carried guilt like armor, heavy and silent. How he'd pause sometimes when I said certain things like they triggered memories he didn't want to revisit. And I noticed how he looked at me, not with possession, with wonder. Like he couldn't understand why I was still there. I didn't understand it either, but I stayed, not because I forgave him, not because I forgot the betrayal, but because the world outside had stopped feeling like mine. And in here within these walls, I was learning who I was. Strong, observant, strategic, still kind. Dominic saw it. He never said it. But I could feel it in the way he let me speak freely, in the way he sought my opinion in front of others, in the way his men started looking at me with something close to respect. I was still a prisoner. But now, I was more than that. I was becoming someone even I didn't recognize. Power isn't something you're handed here. It's something you earn in silence, in moments no one sees. I learned that quickly. At first, I was a curiosity. The girl who should have been broken, but wasn't. The woman who smiled at the cook and nodded at the guards but said nothing when men argued business over whiskey. I kept my eyes open and my mouth shut. Until one night I didn't. It was during a meeting. 6 men. All older, sharper, deadlier. They were discussing a shipment, something off with the numbers. One man suggested burning the whole deal down to send a message. I don't know what came over me, but I spoke. If you torch the shipment, you lose twice. Your cut and your reputation. The room went quiet. Every head turned. Except Dominic's. He didn't blink. He just looked at me and said, "Go on." I laid it out quick, clean, factual. There was a better way. A smarter move. Less blood, more profit. When I finished, no one said a word. Then Dominic gave a small nod. She's right. And just like that, something shifted. Not just in the room, but in me. After that, I was brought into more discussions. Not officially. I wasn't given a seat at the table, but I was always close enough to be heard. Men who once ignored me now watched their words around me. Dominic never called it what it was. He didn't need to. I was becoming an advisor, a quiet force. But with power came danger. One of the older enforcers, Marco, didn't like it. He saw my presence as a threat, and he wasn't wrong. He made sure I knew it. Cold stares, snide comments. One night I caught him talking to someone on the phone saying she's getting too close. I told Dominic. He didn't ask for proof. He just nodded once, and Marco was gone the next day. I should have been relieved. I wasn't. Because now I understood what this world really was. Loyalty earned with blood and trust so rare it felt like currency. And yet, amid all that, something else was happening. Something I hadn't wanted. Something I couldn't stop. We were falling in love. It didn't make sense. Not to anyone watching from the outside. Maybe not even to me. But the more I saw Dominic's layers, the way he treated the staff, the way he fed strays, the way he slept with a light on like he was still haunted by childhood monsters, the more I stopped seeing him as the man who bought me, and started seeing the man who chose to change. It was slow. Respect before affection, understanding before desire. And one night it broke open. We were in the garden. the moonlight caught in his scar. I was talking about my mom, about how she used to tell me stories about stars having names. I said I missed feeling small in a world that felt infinite. He didn't say anything, just took my hand. I never meant to keep you, he said softly. I just couldn't let you go. That night he kissed me, not with heat but with reverence, like he wasn't sure he deserved it. I kissed him back. Not because I forgot what he'd done, but because something in me understood why he did it. Broken men make cruel decisions. But love, real love, doesn't wait for perfect people. It waits for truth. We became something strange. Not captor and captive, not quite lovers. Something else. Something forged in fire and survival. We didn't say I love you. We didn't have to. It lived in gestures, in the way he watched me from across the room like I anchored him, in the way I stood at his side when deals turned dangerous, and he let me speak without interruption. We were equals, even if the world didn't see it that way. But I never forgot where I came from. I remembered the girl tied up in a van, the woman traded for debt, the daughter left behind. And I made a promise to myself and to the woman I was becoming. If I was going to survive in this world, I wouldn't just wear armor. I'd become it. People always say time heals, but that's not true. Time doesn't heal anything. It just gives you space to grow stronger around the pain. And if you're lucky or brave enough, it gives you the power to write your own ending. It's been 5 years. The girl who once sat trembling in the back of a van doesn't exist anymore. I buried her in pieces every time I stood up for myself, every time I made a decision that changed the course of a room full of dangerous men. And in her place, I built someone new. Today, I run the estate. The Scar Dominic is still feared, still respected. But now, when people come to meet with him, they don't just speak to him. They speak to me. I'm not just his partner, I'm his equal. And not because he gave me that seat, because I earned it. There's a garden in the back now filled with wildflowers and lavender. I planted every seed myself. I go there when the world feels loud. Some mornings Dominic joins me. He'll sit beside me in silence, his scar faded, his eyes softer. We don't talk much about the past. We don't need to. But sometimes the past comes knocking anyway. It was Carla who told me. She'd found my father, or what was left of him. Hytran wasn't a man anymore. He was a shadow of one, living in a trailer on the outskirts of a rundown RV park in Nevada. Addicted, alone, broke. He still gambled, still borrowed from people worse than Dominic. But now he had no one left to trade. And when he saw Carla, all he asked was, "Does Emily hate me?" She said she didn't answer, because the truth wasn't simple. I don't hate him. Not anymore. I just don't need him. Weeks later, a letter came. His handwriting. Still sloppy. Still trying too hard to sound sober. It wasn't an apology. Not really. Just a string of regrets. He said he'd seen a photo of me standing next to Dominic at a charity event in LA, wearing a navy suit looking like someone untouchable. He said I looked like my mother. He said he was proud. And that's when the tears came. Not because I needed his pride, but because for the first time in my life he saw me. Not as a burden, not as a bargaining chip, but as a woman who made it. I never wrote back. Closure doesn't always come with conversations. Sometimes it comes when you realize you don't owe anyone your healing. I still think about that phone call, about how he laughed when they said my life was on the line. Now he sits alone, surrounded by the wreckage of his choices, while I sit beside a man who sees me not as something owed, but something earned. And that's the lesson life handed me the hard way. You don't get to choose how you're broken, but you do get to choose who you become after. So if you're listening to this, maybe you've been betrayed. Maybe someone you trusted traded your worth for their convenience. Maybe you've been dragged into a version of your life you never asked for. I know what that feels like, but I also know this: your pain isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your power. If my story moved something in you, if you saw even a piece of yourself in the girl I used to be, don't let it stop here. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below. Tell me the moment you realized your past couldn't define you. I want to read every word, and don't forget to subscribe because this isn't the end. It's just the start of something bigger.